اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد. خل المقادير تمضي لا تغالبها، فإن من غالب الأقدار مغلوب. إن القضاء لسيف لا يقاومه شيء من الخلق إلا وهو محبوب. وامشي رويدا مع الأقدار في مهل، فإن من يكره الأقدار متعوب. سلم وفوض لحكم الله محتسبا، فإنما الأمر مقضي ومكتوب. والله يقضي بما شاء وكيف يشاء، والعبد عبد ومخلوق ومربوب. ولم يزل ربه الرحمن يكلأه، باللطف والحفظ محفوف ومصحوب. حسن ظنونك بالرب الكريم، ولا تسيء ظنا فتبقى عنه محجوب. واعمل لنفسك أعمالا تسر بها، فكل ما يفعل الإنسان محسوب. إن كان خيرا فخير سوف يحصده، أو كان شرا فتنكيل وتعذيب. يا ويل من ضيع الأعمار في زلل، وكل من كسبه الآثام والحوب. واطلب علوما مع إقبال مع عمل، فأنت بالعلم والأعمال مطلوب. واحذر زمانك هذا إنه زمن، به المناكير شاعت والمعايب. فكن وحيدا فريدا خاملا حذرا، فإن فيه الأقاويل الأكاذيب. والظلم فاش بلا لوم ولا نكر، وللمساكين تخويف وترهيب. فكن لبيتك حلسا لا تفارقه، إلا لشيء له في الشرع تصويب. واذكر إلهك ذكرا دائما أبدا، فالذكر بالذكر مقرون ومصحوب. وذاكر الله يجالسه، فاجلس مع الله تأتيك المواهب. واطلب من الله ما تحتاج أجمعه، فالخير يا ذا لديه والمطالب. لا تسأل الله كريم الوجه خالقنا، فعنده الفضل والإحسان مسكوب. واعكف على بابه في كل ما نفس، فإن نسيانه يا صاحبي حوب.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah, we begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this opportunity for us to continue in our lesson in the book Kitab Nur Idah by Al-Imam Hassan Shurun Bulali in the fiqh of Al-Imam Abu Hanifa. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah bless our lesson and make it the reason where our sins are forgiven and our prayers are answered. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. So in our last lesson we were at the part where the author speaks about the things that does not make bathing obligatory. After he mentioned the things that made bathing obligatory, he mentioned the things that does not make bathing obligatory, because there might be some things that people thought that it was obligatory, but in reality it is not obligatory. So this is in a way to inform us in a better sense of this subject. So basically, before this, we mentioned about what makes bathing obligatory. We spoke about the coming out of sperm, and likewise sexual intercourse, and when a person experience menses and postnatal bleeding after he has been cut off. All these things it is wajib for a person to bathe. But this is a chapter where we are going into, where the author mentioned the things that does not make bathing obligatory. So we mentioned a few things. We have reached at point number 5. So let us just go through again the first few pointers, because he mentioned here the things that does not make bathing obligatory. There are 10. So this is what he said, 'Ashratu ashya la yughtasalu minha. 10 things that we do not perform the obligatory bath. Number 1, if a person sees madhi. Madhi is a colorless liquid that's sticky. Usually it comes out when a person is tired. This does not make bathing obligatory, because this is not mani. This is not sperm. And wadi, it is a whitish liquid that comes out with urine when a person has in a state of tiredness, or having back pain sometimes. So this colorless liquid it comes out with urine. This is not mani. Number 3 is when a person sees in a dream that he is doing sexual intercourse, but there are no traces of sperm, bila balalin. And likewise pertaining to woman, as what the author mentioned. Number 4, we spoke about giving birth. Giving birth in the Hanafi madhab, if there is no postnatal bleeding, bathing is not compulsory. And this is the difference between the Shafi and the Hanafi in this regard. But in the Hanafi madhab, they mentioned that is encouraged to bathe, ihtiyatan, as a precaution. Even though a woman does not experience any postnatal bleeding, but the original ruling is that bathing is not compulsory. So today's our lesson, we will begin from here. Point number 5. Number 5, the author mentioned ilajun bi khirqatin mani'atin min wujudil ladhah. If a person wears something on his penis, and he insert the penis into the vagina, insert the penis into the vagina, but this thing that he wears around in his penis is something that prevents any form of ladha, any form of sexual pleasure, meaning there is no feeling of the heat of the internal part of the vagina, and there is no feeling of any sexual we say arousal, no sexual arousal that result from this insertion. Here he is speaking about a type of barrier that is placed around the penis, to a sense that the person who wears this thing doesn't feel anything when it is inserted into the woman's private part. So in this regard, bathing is not compulsory. Bathing is not compulsory because although there is any insertion of the penis, but it is something that is not felt. It is something that is not felt due to the presence of this barrier. Type. One might ask, what about the condoms that are used today? Condoms are not like this. Condoms are designed that a person feels the sexual pleasure, feels the heat, and all these things. So it makes obligatory bath obligatory upon the person. Here the author is speaking about a certain material that prevents any form of sexual arousal or feelings when it is inserted into the private part. So this is point number 5. But of course, based on precaution, ihtiyat, it is better to perform the obligatory bath. Number 6, hukna. Hukna that is meant here, this is a traditional way of removing our bowels from the anus, that something is placed in the anus, and then after that it is washed out. So this does not make bathing obligatory, although there is an insertion in the anus, but it does not make bathing obligatory, because a person is not in the state of hadath unless if what you call it, a penis and is inserted, a private part any of the male and is inserted. Otherwise, any it does not makes bathing any obligatory by removing any the bowels any from a person. Number 7, idkhalu isba', and if a person puts any his finger and make it enter into his anus or woman and into the vagina, this does not make bathing obligatory. Now, so by inserting any finger does not make bathing obligatory, even though any there is any arousal. وَنَحْوِهِ فِي أَحَدِ السَّبِيلَيْنِ. So whether we are speaking about finger or other than finger, as long as it is not any private part, which is the penis, then it does not any make any bathing any obligatory. But here we have to we have to understand the author is just mentioning about the ruling of this insertion, whether it makes bathing go obligatory or not obligatory. But when comes to the action, whether it is haram or not haram, it depends. And if a person does it with sexual arousal by using his hand and all these things, this is not permissible, but it does not make any bathing obligatory. Number 8, wa wat'u bahimatin, and if a person has sexual intercourse with an animal, bahima, does this sexual intercourse makes any bathing obligatory? The answer is no. The answer is no. In the Hanafi madhab, it does not make bathing obligatory. Why? Because they say ash-shahwatu fihi qasira. The sexual arousal it is not the same and is to be done with a human being, because this is unnatural. This is an unnatural form of sexual intercourse. So it does not make bathing obligatory, even though there is an insertion. Number 9, aw maitatin. Likewise, and if a person performs sexual intercourse with a dead person, with the deceased, min ghairi inzal, where there is no ejaculation of the sperm, it does not make bathing obligatory. Again, here we are speaking about the issue of bathing. We are not speaking about the issue whether this action is halal or haram. Of course, it's haram. But here the author is specifically mentioning this in the chapter of bathing to inform us that this kind of action, although it is haram, but it does not make bathing obligatory unless if there is ejaculation. If there is ejaculation, it is compulsory upon him to bathe because of khurujul mani, not because of the sexual intercourse. Number 10, wa isabatu bikrin lam tazul bakaratuha min ghairi inzal. If a person has sexual intercourse with a virgin, and the virginity is not gone, the virginity is still present, then bathing is not obligatory. Because why? Normally, if the head of the penis is inserted into the vagina, automatically the virginity will break. Automatically the virginity will break. But now is a situation the virginity does not break. It shows that the insertion is a minor insertion. So it does not come to a state of sexual intercourse. That is why bathing, the obligatory bath, is not compulsory unless if a person ejaculates. If a person ejaculates, then bathing becomes compulsory. So this is the 10 things these are the 10 things that the author mentioned. Fi ma la yujibul ightisal. The things does not make bathing obligatory. Then after that the author mentioned fi fara'idil ghusli. Now he going to speak about the integrals, the things that are wajib for when we are performing the ghusl. So he mentioned يفترض في الاغتسال 11 شيئا. So altogether there are 11 things that is fard, that is obligatory upon a Muslim. When he's performing the obligatory bath, that he must make sure all these things are present. Number 1, ghaslul fam. It is compulsory upon a person when he's performing the obligatory bath, he must take into consideration the internal part of the mouth. So it is wajib. Likewise, al-anf, the internal part of the ears. Walbadn, the whole body, the outward layer of the body. And what is compulsory is maratan, even though it is only once. So if a person wash the whole body, including the mouth and the nose, even for one time, that suffice. That we say he has performed the minimal obligation. Number 4, وداخل قلفة. Qulfa is the skin of a person who does not circumcise. it is compulsory to make sure that water reaches the internal part of that skin, because that is considered to be the outer part of the body. La usra fi fuskhiha, meaning there is no difficulty in opening it, in making sure that the water comes and reach those parts, unless if it is what you call it, closed for example, and cannot be open. That is different situation. Number 5 was suratin, the navel. It is compulsory that when we bathe, we make sure that the water reaches the navel, because there is a possibility that water might not reach because it is a hole that is in the center of the body. And then number 6 that he mentioned was suqbin ghairi mundam, and all holes that is present in our body that is not covered, meaning water can reach those places, then it is compulsory upon us to make sure that water reaches those parts. So certain what you call it, parts of our body, there are certain holes. So we have to wash the outer layer. Number 7, وداخل المضفور من شعر الرجل مطلقا, if a man he has this what you call it, like the tying of the hair and make it into the beads. If a man is doing it, it is compulsory upon him to open it, so that he make sure that water reaches the hairs. Water reaches the hairs, but not if it is a woman, because normally any woman has long hair, so the ruling for woman is lesser than men. Men it is not what you call it, recommended for them to keep long hair, and it is not something that is usual for men to have long hair. So if men have tie the hair into beads, then it is compulsory upon them to open it and make sure that water reaches the hairs. But for women, it is permissible for them to wear to tie their hair, and it is not compulsory upon them to open it if water can reach in between the hairs, and likewise at the scalp area. This is the meaning of أصوله. Number 8, وبشرة اللحية ولو كثيفة. When a person has a beard, we have to make sure that water reaches the skin underneath, even though if the beard is thick. So in bathing, we do not differentiate between thick and thin, not like in wudu, but in bathing, it is compulsory for us to make sure that water reaches the skin, no matter how thick and how thin the hairs of the mustache or the beard. Number 9, وبشرة الشارب, likewise the mustache. It is compulsory that we make sure that water reaches the bashara. Bashara is the skin underneath. والحاجب, hajib is this part of the upper eyes. والفرج الخارج, and the vagina of a woman, and the outer part of the vagina. What is the meaning? Meaning, if a woman is standing up, certain parts of the vagina is overlapped. So what she has to do is she has to stretch out a bit, in a way that the outer part of the vagina is accessible to water, because these are the parts that is compulsory upon her to wash. Then only the bathing becomes compulsory. Likewise for men, especially for men who are obese, then it requires certain level of effort to make sure that the water reaches the overlapping parts of the body, because at the end of the day, what is compulsory is that we make sure that water reaches all parts of the body. Then the author speaks about the sunnahs in bathing. Maybe we cover a bit before we stop. So he mentioned faslun fi sunanil ghusli. So after he spoke about the obligations in bathing, he began to speak about the sunnahs. ويسن في الاغتسال اثنا عشرة شيئا. So there are 12 things that is sunnah, to be performed in bathing. Number 1, الابتداء بالتسمية. A person, sunnah for him, before he perform the bath, he recite the basmala. So he recite this basmala before he open his clothes. Because why? It is not any sunnah to recite zikrullah in a state of nakedness. Now, this is mentioned by the author in so many of his books. Number 2, an-niyyah. So here we have to pay attention. In the Hanafi madhab, intention is not obligatory in bathing. In the madhab al-Imam Shafi'i, intention is the first obligation. But in the Hanafi madhab, just like wudu, we mentioned that niyyah is not compulsory, but it is a sunnah. It is recommended. And the difference between a person who makes intention and a person who does not make intention, a person who does not make intention will not get the rewards of the bathing, because rewards only comes with intention. Innamal a'malu bin niyat. But if a person makes the intention for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to lift this major ritual impurity, raful hadath al-akbar lillahi ta'ala, make this intention of bathing and removing this major impurity for himself, he will get rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the difference between a person who makes the intention and the person who does not make the intention. Number 3, rasulul yadaini ila rusrain, to wash the hands all the way until the wrists, before he begins to perform the bathing. Number 4, ruslun najasa, he makes sure that he wash away all kinds of filth, so that when he bathes, the filth does not spread to his body. So if there is filth on my hand, it is a sunnah for me to remove the filth first. Otherwise, if I wash, the filth will spread to other body parts. Ghuslu najasatin walau kanat ala badanihi bin firadiha. Even if there is it is at a particular spot in the body. So it is a sunnah for us to to do the washing. Wa ghuslu farjihi in lam takun bihi najasa. So the first thing the author began by saying that it is a sunnah to begin with the private parts if there is no najis, and if there is najis, it is compulsory that he remove the filth. If there is he have washed his private parts, he makes the intention of bathing. So he began by washing of the private parts, then only wudu. And the reason why it is a sunnah for us to wash the private parts before wudu, so that our wudu will not be invalidated if we touch our private parts based on opinions of other scholars. So this is a better way, that we wash our private parts before we perform our wudu. So he said, ghuslu farjihi in lam takun bihi najasa summa yatawadda'u ka wudu'ihi lis-salah. After washing of the private parts, then only he takes ablution, fa yusallisul ghusla wa yamsahu ra'sa. So he bathes 3 times in the bathing, and likewise he washes his head. So inshallah ta'ala, because of time, we will stop here. Inshallah, in next week we will continue from here. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.